I never attended school in Korea, so I didn't learn Korean history from a textbook. I learned it from movies. And not on purpose either. I'd watch a film like President's Last Bang or May 18th, and I would find myself either Googling or trying to read the wiki to learn more about the events. And over time, I had basically stitched together an understanding of recent Korean history just by watching enough Korean movies. So today, I want to walk you through the story of 20th century Korea the way that I learned it, through 15 films that explain how Korea became the Korea of today. We start in 1909 and the movie Harbin, released in 2024. Harbin takes place at a time when Korea was slowly headed towards annexation into Japan. This spurred independence fighters like An Jung-gun to resist Japanese imperial rule, and this movie depicts his battles in Manchuria and Russia. The film is really beautifully shot, but if you take away the cinematography and score, you are left with a very serious and prodding historical drama. Nonetheless, I think it's important to understand how An Jung-gun became the role model and inspiration for all resistance fighters in the decades to come. And Harbin does show the main incident that cemented An Jung-gun in Korean history. As for the movie, I will give it 3 out of 5 stars. Despite An Jung-gun and the resistance fighters, Korea was annexed by Japan and became a colony in 1910, but a generation of independence fighters continued the fight, and the best movies depicting their efforts are Age of Shadow and Assassination. I would start with Age of Shadows by Kim Ji-yoon. It's a suspenseful espionage movie with more complexity in the characters. But if you want something more casual, Assassination is a high-energy ensemble action film that has a lot more straightforward story. Both films do a great job of showing the multiple facets of Koreans during this colonial period. There are Koreans that sided with the Japanese, Koreans that fought for freedom, and Koreans that went wherever the next opportunity was to make a dollar. Both are solid 4 out of 5 movies. Then we move into World War II. Korea is still a Japanese colony, but the Korean peninsula wasn't the scene of any significant ground battles. Instead, a lot of Koreans were sent to Japan to support the war effort by working as laborers. A movie that depicts Koreans slaving away is Battleship Island, which takes place on a coal mine in an actual place called Hashima Island. This movie is sensationalism at 11. Everything is exaggerated, from the cartoony characters to the "I know for sure this didn't happen" type of situations. It's probably the most unrealistic movie on this list, with maximum creative liberties to make it into an entertaining movie. And while the plot is very fictional, what the movie does well is portray the different ways Koreans were mistreated and taken advantage of under the guise of honest pay. For the movie, I will give it 3.5 out of 5. But this is a guilty pleasure movie for me. It wasn't just regular civilians that were shipped off to Japan, but even the royal family. Japan would force children of Korea's royal family to live and marry in Japan in order to dilute power and get rid of figureheads that could represent Korean leadership. In The Last Princess, we see the life of Deok Ongju, or Deok Princess. Ignore the contrived situations in the middle, and you have a lovely and tragic portrayal of one of the last members of Korea's royal family. I'll give the movie 3.5 out of 5. Korea gains independence following World War II, but the peace was short-lived as South Korea soon entered a civil war with North Korea in 1950. If you want the action movie version of the Korean War, then Taegukgi Brotherhood of War is the movie for you. This is the de facto Korean movie about the Korean War. This is the most on the nose you can get with Civil War metaphors, since it pits brother against brother on opposite sides of the battle. Still, you get to see the various environments in which the war took place, some of the impact it had on civilians, and you also get to see the overwhelming numbers of the Chinese army. All through a well-made and well-acted movie, so this is a must-watch. I would also recommend watching The Front Line. This takes place during the final days of the war on a singular mountain and everyone is sick of fighting. If Taegukgi is an action movie, then The Front Line is a depressing, gritty, war is pointless, this is hell version of the war. It's super depressing and I love it. Both movies are 5 out of 5. After the Civil War, Korea enters a phase of rapid development and growth, and the movie to get a crash course on the civilian life in the 60s and 70s is Ode to My Father. A warning though, the movie is shameless in its patriotism, how it uses tear-jerking moments and emotional manipulation as it tries to get a reaction out of you. For me, it did work on the family parts, but less so on the Vietnam War parts. But it still touches upon major events for civilians trying to rebuild a life following a devastating war, going far and wide to make a buck, and there are some cool Easter eggs depicting prominent Korean figures of that time, spanning business, fashion, art, and sports. I'll give the movie a 3.5 out of 5. The Korean president in power during this time was Park Chung-hee, who undeniably led the economic growth known as the Miracle on the Han River. While he accomplished a lot, he ruled with an iron fist and stayed as president for 18 years. So he was eventually assassinated in the name of democracy and progress. There are 2 movies you can pick to learn about the assassination: The President's Last Bang and The Man Standing Next. And I recommend the latter. The President's Last Bang takes a dark comedy approach, and The Man Standing Next is the complete opposite, which I think is more fitting of the situation. I'll give both 4 stars out of 5. Amidst the power vacuum following Park Chung-hee's death, another military general, Chun Doo-hwan, led a coup to take over the government. So Korea barely comes out of one dictatorship and enters another one with a worse leader just a few months later. And 12/12 The Day depicts the events on the night of the coup in a straightforward, serious take of the event. It's done well enough with good acting, good pacing, and a high quality production. I'll give this 3 or maybe 3.5 out of 5 stars. Chun Doo-hwan, people say, is one of the worst presidents in Korean history, and the blood of hundreds of protesters are on his hands, most notably from the Gwangju uprising in 1980. People were protesting to end authoritarian rule, but Chun decided to send in the army and open fire on his citizens. Once again, you have 2 movies covering the event. May 18th focuses directly on various citizens of Gwangju, including students, families, and militia volunteers. I think you get a broader and a clearer understanding of the events in chronological order. But Taxi Driver is a better movie, providing the perspective of just 2 characters and their quest to film and document everything they've witnessed and smuggle it outside of Gwangju. Watch both if you're up for it. Watch May 18th to learn in general more about the incident, but Taxi Driver if you're seeking the better movie. I'll give Taxi Driver a 4 and May 18th a 3.5. Tensions between the people and Chun Doo-hwan come to a head in 1987 when protests finally forced the administration to stop operating as an authoritarian government and accept true democracy. It's covered in the movie 1987 When the Day Comes, which follows the incidents around the death of a student activist and the attempted cover-up. I think it's crazy to think how unrecognizable Korea is from this politically repressed, student activist torturing, and media controlling regime that we see in 1987 to the K-pop, K-beauty, and K-food world that we are living in today. I will give 1987 4.5 stars out of 5. And finally, we arrive at 1997. After decades of growth and rapid modernization, Korea became overly aggressive with highly leveraged banks and institutions. But a negative catalyst started a chain reaction of fleeing investments, and a fragile economic system collapsed, leading to Korea resorting to the IMF. This event is shown through the movie Default, released in 2018. And to be honest, I was hesitant to even include it here because I think it's the weakest movie out of the bunch. I don't agree with how certain perspectives are represented. But the IMF loan is such a pivotal moment that you cannot ignore for Korea in the 90s, and this is the only movie that covers it. I'll give the movie 2.5 stars out of 5. That's it for the 20th century. While it lacks in scale compared to some of its neighbors in China and Russia, I think the velocity of change in Korea definitely stands out. You have annexation, independence, civil war, dictatorships, modern democracy, economic collapse, and recovery, all in 100 years. Let me know if you think some event or movie should have been included. I hope you enjoyed taking a trip through 100 years of Korean history as shown through its movies. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.